Have you seen the Stop Killing Games recent video drama? Okay, so I did say I would look at that today.
You know what this is right here, pal?
What?
Ah, tough guy.
What is it?
You feeling lucky?
No.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely
Spirit
not.
fingers. Do you know why? Because it's been about 30 hours since I last slept, and I've done 3 different intros, all of which crash and burned, and I am off my gourd, so now I'm going wacko mode. But,
nice.
Even in my sleep-deprived state, I am still lucid enough to recognize how cattywampus the AAA gaming space has become.
Word.
Like, the gaming industry has so many things that I have bitched and moaned about. Probably the biggest practice that I've been most vocal about, not exactly shy on, is the topic of you will own nothing and be happy. The Ubisoft motto. God rest that company's soul. What a pile of dog shit. But it's not just Ubisoft. That has become a prevalent business strategy across the gaming industry. You will own nothing. You will be happy. You're basically... You come away with the idea of ownership of whatever games you purchase. The gaming industry is getting away with more and more garbage where they'll take a shit in your mouth and you're expected to thank them for adding some flavor to your taste buds.
That's right.
Terrible. And there is an initiative that has been aiming to fight back against a lot of these practices that I think really need some big overhaul. And it's
it's consumer protection laws. This is effectively what this initiative is. At its very core is consumer rights advocacy. It's not about video games. It's not about Ubisoft. It's not about, you know, what's in a terms of service of a video game or not. It's really about consumer rights and people having the ability to choose what's going to happen with their own stuff.
Initiative that I think a lot of you are probably very familiar with. It's called Stop Killing Games.
That would be a good thing.
And I've followed it since its inception. I've talked about it on stream quite a few times.
So have I.
Though this is my first video going over it. And I regret that now because I see it wasn't going as well as I thought it was.
I think it's gone very well. I'll be real, like almost 500,000 signatures is a tremendous success. But yeah, of course, obviously it's a long way to go to 1 million.
And that it was taking proper steps legally to get there. And it was going through all of the right channels.
Which what has to
happen. And now today I watched a video from the guy that's spearheading this. His name is Ross. He posted a video called The End of Stop Killing Games where he's giving an update on where everything's at and how it's kind of at the finish line here, with a lot of failure to show for it, with only a few other chances to fight back.
I think the big problem with the Stop Killing Games initiative is that not enough people in government are tech savvy enough to understand the complexities and the problems with these nuances with games. Once we have more people that are tech savvy in government, and this becomes more true every single day, and every single year you're going to get more and more people, that's whenever you're really going to see a degree of sympathy here, right? Like, for example, like Ted Cruz understood it. He got it, but other people didn't. So they're just dumb? Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't really say... I don't think the word really is dumb. I just think that they're not gamers, right? And so, like, now you have a lot more people that have grown up playing video games. You know, you have, like, a fucking Congress that's full of people that are 70 years old. Well, they didn't play video games. And, like, you know, if they did, it was an arcade machine. And, well, you don't own the arcade machine, so it's not, like, they don't understand this problem in the same way.
Topic, I want to get this in the beginning because I imagine the vast majority of people won't watch the whole thing.
Yes.
I'm putting a link to the full video on Stop Killing Games, as well as a link to where you'd go to help support the Stop Killing Games initiative. Because there's only a little bit of time left for the most important parts of it now that it's at the end. So if you know what the movement is and want to support it but didn't know where, the resources are in the description. Or if you want to get it right from like the source, I have a link to his video. But I want to go into it myself here because it is a topic that I do feel very strongly about. But for those that don't know anything about Stop Killing Games, I'm going to let him explain it in his own words. That way you can get an actual, correct, informed explanation of what the initiative is. And the reason I say it like that, kind of like fucking all, you know, pinky out, you know, snooty, is because a lot of people don't even really know what this is because of people like Pirate Software completely misrepresenting.
Oh, jeez. They bringing them up.
As a refresher, Stop Killing Games is a consumer movement to stop publishers from effectively destroying video games they have already sold to customers.
The initiative for Stop Killing Games is to serve the purpose of stopping companies from killing games. Okay, I can see that. Yeah, that makes sense.
That people have paid money to own.
Yeah, okay.
I think that is a very understandable, very reasonable take. Very agreeable. Now I want to quickly jump to a different spot in this video because I think it's important to have this in the beginning because it's something a lot of people have heard that comes from someone that is just wrong about it. It's the pirate software portion. Ross is addressing the video pirate software made many months ago.
I remember watching this.
Ross even says that he didn't plan on doing that because he didn't want to be seen as using this for drama farming because it would start to make the movement look less of like a legitimate initiative and more of just like drama slop content type thing. But he finally starts talking about pirate software here because it's at the end of the life cycle of this initiative, and it's not looking promising, so he's willing to do anything to try and set the record straight and hopefully start getting more momentum back to the movement because the damage pirate software did to it through his video was substantial.
This video...
I'm not sure if I entirely agree with it doing substantial damage, and I remember this video was actually one of the first points where pirate software's audience... I have that. So this video was very polarizing with pirate software's audience. And it was one of the big points where, like, I mean, now people don't like Thor, but like back then people were very positive about him. And that video was one of the first points of difference that he had with his audience. You guys remember this?
It came out right as we were building momentum. Then, except for one boost in Germany, the signatures started drying up like clockwork.
I think that's what would have happened already because that's the way any initiative like this happens.
Not understand what Stop Killing Games is. Here it is in his words.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
So for those who don't understand, the Stop Killing Games initiatives
SKG
is basically we don't want single-player games.
No.
To have DRM that the developers can turn off and thus render the single-player games inactive anymore. This is what they want to change. They need to be specific that they're talking about single-player games that do not need a server to support them.
No.
And as much as they want it to be about specifically games where it is a single-player game that has always online functionality, it would impact every live service game that exists. Instead of just targeting single-player, always online games.
No, that's not what it is.
No.
Stop Killing Games includes single-player games, but nothing about it is specific to them. He completely made that up, and I have no idea where he got that impression. It's the first line on the website. Stop Killing Games is a consumer movement started to challenge the legality of publishers destroying video games they have sold to customers. But the movement includes all this stuff from earlier, and he was mostly talking about the initiative.
Yes.
He didn't even get the Cliff Notes summary right.
I'm going to give maybe an unpopular opinion that I don't think developers or publishers should be obligated to maintain a server for an online game indefinitely. Because I think that if you required them to do that, you would effectively kill online games because no company can justify a infinite cost in perpetuity.
He missed all the QTEs and got the bad ending on understanding the initiative from the jump here. Ross is correct. This has nothing to do with just single-player only games
it's also
that require an online connection, that when the online connection is severed, you lose access to the game.
I think that obviously, like, for single-player games, it's easier to make the argument. It's easier to make the argument, it's easier to understand.
Like, yeah, that is included in all of this, but that's not like what the whole movement is about. And for some reason, pirate software is stun-locked on that, like fixated.
On bad faith now? Wait, what do you? Why are people mad? Wait, what's going on? Why are people mad at me for what I'm saying? I support this thing. I was just saying that I don't think developers should have to do that either. Are people? Is this like one of those things where, like, if you say anything negative about it at all, people overreact and think that you're saying something that's like totally different? Because I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. That's weird, right? That's weird. You're not getting the point? Well, no, I'm discussing nuances of how this would work, obviously, because there would be people that would be against it. And so in the conversation about it, you would discuss that. Of course you would.
Oh, Stop Killing Games. They need to be more specific in their language about it being single-player, always online connectivity games. When that's just not what it's about. Like, they're not being specific about that because that is not what they are specifically targeting.
It's the most
It is about the
clear-cut
whole practice
case,
of destroying games that consumers have already purchased and having no end-of-life plans for games that are being sunset. So, for example, The Crew. The Crew is an example everyone is going to reference and talk about because Ubisoft is still currently in a lawsuit battling against it for what happened with this game. But basically, you buy The Crew, Ubisoft pulls the plug on the servers, you can't play The Crew anymore, now it's just an old wet dream of what once was. And they are facing a lawsuit, and while this is in the umbrella of Stop Killing Games, it is not the only thing Stop Killing Games is referencing when it comes to this practice. Pirate Software is so hung up on it being single-player games that people lose access to, when that is a component of it, but not the entire focus.
Yeah, of course, right? I mean, obviously, that's it. And I think chat's angry mostly because you don't understand the content of a buyed product with policy law. That changes in the course of buying the product, not before. Hence, you don't buy GTA 5 with 5 years warranty. You buy GTA 5 to play it however much you want. Yeah, I know that, but in that conversation, you would have to make the distinction between who would be hosting servers and how that obligation would occur.
Well, the short version is the initiative is about requiring publishers to have end-of-life plans for games they've sold to customers in the future. So when they shut them down, customers can continue running them without their support.
And this is something that affects online games and also offline games. Or single-player games.
So that's one Thor doesn't understand.
Yeah.
But he also seems to think this is about converting multiplayer games to single-player.
Transitioning an entire multiplayer server-side game into a single-player video game, which means rebalancing the entire experience around single-player, rebuilding everything in the entire game. How are you going to do that with Final Fantasy XIV? You're just going to make all the raids soloable? Imagine the day that World of Warcraft shuts down, and suddenly you have to make it a single-player game for every individual that ever bought the game. That's what they're asking for.
No.
Because they would have to sunset live service games as a single-player experience.
I don't think that it was ever stated that it needed to be sunset as a single-player experience. I don't think anybody ever said that.
The idea that suddenly you need to make every single live service game playable single-player offline? No, dude.
Correct. No.
It was implied.
This part is more confusing than Finnegan's Wake, because nowhere in anything on Stop Killing Games has this even been like a talking point from anyone besides Pirate Software. I don't know where he pieced this puzzle together. Like I don't get it. Like, if I'm gonna try and like really reach here and give like a charitable explanation for this take, maybe he's extrapolating based on the idea that if publishers have to have end-of-life plans for their games, that includes MMOs, where once the game is getting sunset, you're pulling the plug on it.
Yeah, that's
you would
what
then
he
need
means.
to turn the game over to the community in a playable state, an accessible state, like give the code to them. Thus, it'd turn it into a single-player experience, so the onus would be on the developers to rebalance their game to be a single-player experience for them.
Well, I think also another reason why that discussion was happening is that a lot of the conversation around the Stop Killing Games devolved into single-player versus multiplayer and who can host servers and how. Like, it wasn't actually in the initiative, but after the initiative was presented, people were talking about those topics.
Maybe that's the tree he's barking up with that thought process. I really don't know, because Stop Killing Games at no point ever says any of these multiplayer games need to be converted to single player.
Yeah, nobody said that.
That really is outlandish. And the more I think about it, like, the more nonsensical it becomes, because even in Pirate Software's hypothetical fanfic there, why would the developers need to rebalance the game? They would just turn over the code to the community and just it'd be in that state. They're no longer responsible for balancing the game. That's the whole point. They're not indefinitely supporting it. They would just be responsible of leaving the game in an accessible state to the community while they would shut down the servers on their end. Like, they wouldn't need to go back through with a whole development team and, like, you know, tweak the game to be single-player compatible. It just doesn't make sense.
Well,
like,
if the thing is, if you had a community server, then the community server could do that themselves. Like, you have all kinds of, like, WoW private servers that have solo raids and all kinds of weird bullshit in them now. So really, it's not something that the developer would really need to do, because as long as people were able to host and run their own servers, this could be done by the community for the community.
I really do not understand that one. But apparently a lot of people latched onto that talking point from Pirate Software as something that Stop Killing Games was asking for and how unreasonable it was. Which, if that's what Stop Killing Games was asking for, it would be unreasonable.
Yeah.
But that's not what it's asking for.
Nowhere in there does it say that it's directly targeting always online single-player games.
Oh, he's so close. He's so close to getting it.
It is vague, and because of that, it will impact everyone.
Uh-oh.
He never has that light bulb moment. Well, he is correct in that statement. It's almost as if that's not what the initiative is asking for.
And this is again, this was an outcome of the dialogue around it whenever it came out. Because like whenever this video came out, I watched the same video myself, and a lot of people were drawing a distinction between how would this apply to single player games versus multiplayer games. I think that's probably why he was talking about it, but like Ross is right that it applies to all games.
And just reinforcing that he doesn't know what the Stop Killing Games movement is about. But I have to just show you this because it is so fascinating, because he himself literally calls out that Stop Killing Games at no point explicitly mentions single-player always-online games or anything like that. And for some reason, instead of following the breadcrumbs that would naturally lead him to the conclusion of, oh, maybe I misunderstood, maybe, because it's absent here, that's not what this is actually about. Instead, he uses it as a criticism against the Stop Killing Games initiative entirely, saying it's just too vague, it's way too vague. The reason it is not explicitly stated there is because that is not what the whole initiative is about.
It's also because an initiative like that doesn't, that is legally defined by a governing body. Like, basically, we're not, like, this initiative is not legal text. The initiative is something that we are effectively trying to communicate to developers, or sorry, to the government, in order for them to translate this initiative into legal text. And so it's really not about the specific wording, it's about what the essence of the wording is and what the goal is what the goal they're trying to achieve is. Like, very clearly, this wasn't written by a lawyer, and it would be debated between probably dozens of lawyers whenever it would be discussed. It's not a law. Yeah, exactly. Like, the reason why it's not hyper-precise is because it's not a law.
Targeting that thing that you keep saying that it is. I don't know how that never clicked.
But those were his streams with a smaller audience. What does he say in his big YouTube video with over 1 million views that he had time to research?
If we're trying to kill off the practice of developers putting together a live service game, pitching it as a single-player experience, and then taking away support in the future.
Yeah.
Now he's changed it again and is making up how it's about single-player games are advertised. What is he doing?
It needs to be specific about the business practice it's trying to defeat, which is specifically companies that are doing this under the guise of it being a single-player game, but adding online-only functionality that is not necessary and doesn't add any gameplay elements. That's the problem.
No, that's not it at all.
This is a really strong section from Ross here, because the clips that you saw moments ago were from his stream.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's a component to it, but it's not the entire thing. I mean, again, like, there's there would be, like, for example, the way that you would run a single-player game would be different than the way that you would run a multiplayer game. Like, for example, like, giving players the code for a game would be less necessary and less important if you're just running a game like Dark Souls 1 or Hades or something like that. So, like, it's just simply one permutation of it. But there's really about probably 4 or 5 of different types of games.
More time to watch it and digest it, he still came back in that video misrepresenting it. Like, it never dawned on him. Like, on stream, he could write it off as like, oh, he didn't grasp it at the moment, maybe later on he did. Well, then he made the video where he still was talking about things that are just not what Stop Killing Games was about, and this was the one that really blew up and really started to kind of dismantle the Stop Killing Games momentum.
If we don't like the idea of live service games as a whole, I get it. Don't play live service games then. Don't agree to those terms.
No, he's getting a new thing wrong now.
I think that the idea of not agreeing to certain terms is, I don't like that mindset. And the reason why I don't like the mindset is because you could make that argumentation to justify any type of consumer unfriendly practice that's ever existed. The fact is that certain things consumers should not be able to consent to because they're just simply not in the consumer's best interest. And that's why you need government and you need to have regulations. And I know some people act like regulation is some kind of evil fucking, evil spirit word. But the reality is that the computer you're using, the monitor that you're looking at, the phone that you're on, everything that you're using is a product of infinitely many Russian nesting dolls of regulations. So everything like this is regulated. So the entire concept about this is about, regulation being bad, completely untrue. People, again, it's like a fish complaining about water.
Live service games then. Don't agree to those terms.
Yeah.
No,
the term
he's
should
getting
never
a
be
new
there.
thing wrong now. We're not against them existing. We're against them being destroyed with no recourse for the customer.
Yeah.
Pirate Software then goes on to talk about like the business practice of misleading consumers into thinking that what they're buying is a product as opposed to a license to a product.
Just because they rename something doesn't mean that it's a good idea or that it's good for a consumer. Maybe this is like a fucking socialism take, but if a business practice has no upside for the customer, then I don't really think it should exist. Why should a business practice exist at all if it has no upside for the customer?
Killing Games for not being specific about that thing that he is bringing up, as opposed to what Stop Killing Games is talking about. So he's using that against them for some reason. And then Ross goes into like the license talk.
Our problem is not with licenses failing to inform people. Blizzard says they can take away your purchase for no reason.
Yeah, I think that's bullshit. They shouldn't be able to do that. If they do, they should have to give you your money back. There's somebody saying they don't have enough knowledge to understand the problem. This is about giving away the code. So this is one thing that a lot of people might not understand is that you don't need to be an expert in coding to realize that you're getting scammed. Just because somebody knows a lot about coding and they understand it better than I think Pirate Software probably understands coding better than me, Ross, or Charlie. I would assume that to be the case. But again, think about how many other things we don't know a lot about. Like, we don't know how to make a car. We don't know how to make an airplane. We don't know how to do any of this. But does that mean that we can't ask for safer cars and safer airplanes at better prices that are reasonable? No. Or medicine or something like that. So the reality is that, yes, while somebody might have more knowledge in the topic, that doesn't necessarily mean that that knowledge overrides other people's desire to be treated fairly. And I think if you applied this logic to other situations where people don't have that knowledge in, it would become immediately true that that's the case.
Sounds pretty clear to me. Our problem is those terms are so hostile to consumers and the medium taken off the table entirely.
Yeah, it's not like
this
you can just that cancels it out.
Forget video games.
That's not how it works.
If you look at basic commerce for hundreds of years, when you paid money, you either got to keep what you paid for, or if it was a service, you were told when your access ends.
Yes.
The vast majority of online-only games do neither of those.
He's exactly right. That is a huge problem. Now, Pirate Software is correct here about these companies that will mislead consumers.
I don't think that Ross's solution to that would be sufficient because the developer could say that the game will be live for at least 1 year, and then that could give them an out later on, and it would create the same problem. You'd need to have more inclusive language to avoid situations like that, where companies create dishonest timeframes in order to avoid this responsibility.
And so too is the actual agreements, as Ross demonstrates with Blizzard, where it says they can just completely terminate it for no reason at all. It really does go against the basic idea of commerce entirely. Video games are in a totally different ballgame.
And so are movies
when it
now,
comes
too.
to that. Because half the time you don't realize that you're just buying an admission ticket to a game. You're not actually buying the game. You also don't know how long that's going to last. Again, to go back to Concord, that shit lasted less
3
than
days.
fucking you know, fucking rainstorm, basically. Like, there is just so many problems. So I don't know why Pirate Software would be so harsh on Stop Killing Games for not addressing specific things that he himself...
I think the reason why Thor was so hostile towards it is because he thought that it was unfair towards developers. And Thor is a developer, and so he's taking that perspective. Like, I don't think he looked at it from the perspective of a consumer, but he looked at it instead from the perspective of a developer. Which, again, that's going to be an unpopular opinion to have because most people that consume content about video games aren't developers, they're players.
It really is a video that did significant damage to an actually positive initiative that aimed to help consumers in the video game space. All based on his complete misrepresentation of it, which was a complete mess.
People said his perspective was wrong even if it's from the developer. I didn't say that it was right. I made a video response to this video that I agreed that certain things were vague and that and companies shouldn't be compelled to provide service in a way that they don't choose to. But the majority of what he said I disagreed with even back then. You can go back and watch the video. And so this is something that I've been completely consistent with the entire time. Also, like, again, I think if a product doesn't exist in a way that's beneficial for a customer, then it shouldn't exist.
Try to tell me that every studio needs to run their live service game indefinitely or not want to run one at all, then no one's going to run them.
Oh, no!
Yeah.
He wheeled out that line about publishers having to support the game forever. He was literally watching earlier where it says it won't do that in big letters. That wasn't enough. We just can't stop gamers from going there, even when we spell it out.
That's the last clip I want to show from this section on the Pirate Software video, but it's a very important one because this is something a lot of people also think the Stop Killing Games initiative is about, where developers, publishers will have to support their games.
I think your line of thinking is wrong, mainly because it's jumping to conclusions when Stop Killing Games is about starting on that path. Well, I agree with starting on that path, but in the process of starting on the path, wouldn't you want to chart out your destination too? I'm saying, like, it's an open conversation, isn't it? Yeah, of course you want to talk about, like, oh yeah, well, what do you think about this? How would this work? How would that work? Like, how would you do this? How would you do that? I mean, I think these are pretty normal questions to ask.
Like, until the fucking heat death of the universe, they'll have to support these games under the initiative. When that is not the case. It is very simply asking that when the game has reached the end of its life cycle, the publishers, developers don't want to work on it any longer.
The vagueness is key for the initiative.
Turn it over to the community to still be in a playable, accessible state so the product can still exist. There is some more nuance, obviously, to how that works, given, like, publisher developer licensing and a lot of, like, the code, the binary, that kind of thing.
I'm not sure if I agree that the companies should have to relinquish the code. I'm not sure if I agree with that. I think that might go too far. I'd really have to think about that more because there's a lot of proprietary code and things like that that would make no sense. Yeah, I think that would be too much.
But the belief that it is about endlessly supporting a live service game, even when it makes no sense to do so, and it's beyond dead and in the dirt,
that's not a good idea at all.
Because that is not what it is asking for, and a lot of people think that it is. It's not. Pirate Software got that wrong as well. Anyway, I'll stop yapping about it. But as mentioned in the beginning, most of Stop Killing Games hasn't been successful in getting change. And Ross has dedicated so much of his life to this, and it's clearly taken a big toll.
It's been a lot.
Now he's doing everything he can for this last-ditch push to try and help. And there are two big things coming up that can do so.
What are they?
It's what I linked at the very beginning of the at the very beginning of the video about the resources in the description. It's in regards to this.
One is for the UK to sign a government petition to bring this issue before Parliament. Though, keeping it real, I'm not terribly optimistic about this one, since the government response has been a mess by every definition. But the one that has a lot of power, so much so I think it could change the course of gaming history, is the European Citizens Initiative. Now, I said I'm approaching this like a time traveler because with the trajectory we're on, these are both going to fail. Again, this one is crazy powerful, but the hurdle we just couldn't get past was that it requires 1 million signatures from citizens of EU countries. and we've only made it just under halfway.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't realize
lot.
is that in the EU especially, it's almost a state of lawlessness regarding the practice of game destruction.
I feel like this is the case everywhere. Like, it's kind of like an uncharted territory. Because, like, we're just now entering into the phase of live service products going end of service. Or things that you buy through a license on the internet that disappear. Like, really, it's kind of a new phenomenon. That's fundamentally what the problem is that the technology has advanced way faster than the law has.
Say they can be terminated at any time for any reason. Or Blizzard likes to say any or no reason. But according to the EU Commission, that might be a violation of Directive 93/13 EEC, which protects consumers against unfair terms in consumer contracts.
Yes.
If that term is unfair, that means that part of the contract is null and void.
He goes on to explain how powerful that can be because of what a mess that is. Because there is so much gray area with how the video games currently operate in regards to those protections, it would be a legal headache that would require an analysis of the laws or implementation of new laws that could lead to, hopefully, an improvement.
And that's the goal. But that's not something that anybody in this video would be able to do. This would have to be defined by people that have extensive understanding of copyright and IP law. And basically, lawyers and politicians would have to come to this conclusion. The initiative is just simply to bring awareness to the issue. It's basically saying we have a problem, but it's not giving a solution.
So the big hurdle was the signatures, needing 1 million, and currently it's at like 460,000, so it doesn't reach the threshold. I've been very vocal from the very beginning about how little faith I have in petitions, but that's just from the perspective of an American. In America, petitions are more worthless than toilet paper. You're better off just writing what you want on a note to Santa Claus and shipping it to the North Pole than you are doing anything with a petition in this country.
Is there tariffs there?
I don't know how different it is in the EU.
I think it's very obvious that the European Union is more progressive about creating digital consumer protections. And I think that they are about probably 10 years ahead of the United States. And that's a good thing. So if it's going to happen anywhere, it will happen in the EU.
Maybe it really is this powerful there that could lead to substantial change and improvement when it comes.
And by the way, this is something that makes things better for everybody too. Because as soon as this is made available and made evident to everyone, then we can all see, hey, yeah, by the way, this is actually something that's very beneficial. This is something that's great. And it also, the companies, if enough countries have laws against these types of practices, then those types of practices become non-commercially viable. And as soon as that happens, that's whenever games change for everybody.
Overall, in the big budget games and the way the industry keeps pushing things, it sucks. So I wanted to talk about Stop Killing Games here. Hopefully things can turn around and maybe a huge W's around the corner for the Stop Killing Games initiative. We'll see. But anyway, I want to commend Ross for his hard work spearheading all of this for so long.
Ross has done a great job.
And that's really about it. See ya.
Yeah, no, I think this is definitely true, and I'm very glad to see this. I think this is it's a great thing. Well, this is what I think they should do, right? Is that for a single-player game, and if you violate the terms of service in a single-player game, you should be able to lose access to the server. Like, I'm very, very much against providing someone service that you don't want to provide service to anymore, right? Like, I mean, I think, like, whenever you're compelling service, that's effectively slavery, and so I don't support that. And I'll also link the petition so you guys can take a look at it as well, and we can get an idea of how many people are actually signing this. And so where is it? Right here. There it is. 50. Wow. So now it's actually, I guess it's achieved a second wind with this new conversation about it. And there's the thing right there. If you're a European citizen and you care about this this issue, again, the solutions provided by Stop Killing Games might not necessarily be what the most reasonable and the best solutions could be, but at the same time, it's something that, you know, at least is a good start, right? And so I'll link it to you guys again so you can take a look at it. Can we sign it if you're in the USA? I think so, yes. But I think European citizens are counted differently if what Charlie said is accurate. But I'm not sure. Maybe he just said that for some other reason. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that's it.